Hey everyone, welcome back to another video from ICM 2.0, the Python version. In this video, we are going to talk about how to write custom functions in Python that we can use to draw repeated designs on our page. So the first thing that we want to know before we dive into writing our functions is that everything we have used so far that has a parentheses after it, whether it's taking values in those parentheses or not, is considered a function. Functions are something in our code that are doing an action. And the way they work is that someone much smarter and above our pay grade has already coded the algorithm, the individual steps to make that function run somewhere behind the scenes. We are just accessing that function through the processing module. And for some, we might like print. That is something that's native to the Python language. So someone in developing the Python language and making sure that computers can talk back and forth with Python, they developed a function called print. It's doing a ton of stuff behind the scenes. We don't have to worry about any of that. That's not our business. We just have to use it. And as we've seen, we can use it over and over and over again, giving it different values each time so that it behaves the same way, but a little differently. Now, today, we're going to work on writing our own functions. And to do this, there is starter code. It'll be linked in this video description. It is also linked in the curriculum. I have gone ahead and I have put it in a document already. I'm going to go ahead and rename this. This is an old document that I'm just writing over. We're going to make functions that draw. You'll see that in this document, I have done a few things. First, we've labeled where our functions are going to go. This is a great practice to get into when you're writing your code to label where your functions and your variables are, so that when you are looking at your code, you can find them quickly. You'll also see that I have made two little faces for us. We have a happy face and we have an angry face. And we are going to be able to, by the end of this, use a function for happy face and angry face to make a bunch of these all over our screen. So to get us started, we're going to learn how to define a function in Python. Our whole goal here, we're going to start with the happy face. I want to be able to put this happy face all over my screen, multiples of the happy face. And I could do that by copying and pasting this code and adjusting the values for my ellipse and all of my arcs, but that sounds pretty tedious and tiring. It also sounds really repetitive. And we've mentioned this before, anytime our code seems to be repeating itself a lot, or it's just taking like a lot of maybe inefficient steps, we should be looking for an easier way to do that. And here, our easier way is through a function. So up where I've labeled, I'm putting my functions. I'm going to start defining my function by using this word that we have seen through processing before, def. Def is the keyword that tells Python everything after it is a new function I am defining. I'm going to call my function happy face. And again, I am camel casing just to keep with the syntax of processing. If you are a traditional Python person and you would like to camel case by using an underscore instead of that capital letter, please feel free. And after it, I'm going to put parentheses. Every single function we use is going to have these parentheses after it. And that is what tells our computer that this is definitely a function and it is not a variable. Now, the next most important thing, this needs to end with a colon. And this is something that we can model off of lines 9 or line 13, where we have our setup and draw function. These are functions. They're just functions that work a little differently because they are part of processing. The structure remains very much the same. Now, when I hit enter, you're going to notice that I am automatically indented underneath that define happy face function. Just like with setup and with draw, I need to be indented under my function for the computer to know that things are a part of that function. They're like inside of that function. The computer has defaulted to indenting me once, which is totally acceptable as long as I keep that one indentation the entire time. If you want it to look more in line with your setup and draw function, you could indent twice, but that does mean that you are going to be indenting twice for every single future line. So rather than rewrite my whole happy face, I'm just going to come down here. I'm going to copy all of this code. I'm going to come up to the top. I'm going to paste it in. I'm just going to do a quick check to make sure everything is in line the way I think it is. If I wound up with something like this, I would get an error when I run this function that indentation, unexpected indentation would be the error. So I want to make sure that everything is coded in line with itself. Now I have made my function, so I'm going to take a leap of faith. I'm actually going to actually, before we do that, let's stop this and run it. It looks good. I'm getting no errors, but also nothing is really happening so far. And this is similar to when we learned to create variables. I've made a function. I haven't used my function yet. And that's cool, but like, why did I write this if I'm not going to use it? So I'm going to head down to my draw function. I'm going to take a leap of faith and I'm going to delete all of that code that I previously copied and moved up into my function. So underneath happy face, it now says nothing. Now I'm going to practice calling my function, which is what we call writing out the function name. So I'm going to write in happy face. I'm going to put parentheses so that the computer knows that it's the function I'm calling. I'm going to hit stop. I'm going to hit play. And we should notice that absolutely nothing on our canvas has changed. And that's beautiful because even though all of my code to write the happy face isn't there, I was able to successfully replace it with happy face and it drew on the screen. If I get rid of this function, I'm just commenting it out and I hit play, you'll notice it disappears. So it is not drawing because of this definition. This definition are like secret instructions, like the steps to the Macarena that you've saved in your brain for years, but aren't using every minute of the day. And once you call it, those instructions start getting used on your page. This is a huge step for us. This is a huge step towards simplifying our code. But what if I want to make multiples? I'm going to start writing happy face multiple times. I'm going to try and make 3 happy faces. And if I hit stop and hit play, I still only see 1 happy face on the screen. Some of you might have a hunch as to why this is. And if we go up and look at our code, it's because it's following these exact instructions every single time. And that means it is always going to draw my happy face at exactly these same coordinates every single time. If I want to be able to change my happy face, if I want to be able to tell the computer, put it somewhere else, make it a different size, make it a different color, I need to include parameters to my functions. Parameters are these numbers we plug in. The numbers are called arguments. Those are what go in for the parameters. When I plug in arguments, the computer is going to sub those in for all of my different little attributes, parameters that I'm putting into my function, and it's going to change the way that function looks. So I think the first thing I want to do here is I want to be able to move my face around the page. So I'm going to give it 2 parameters. I'm going to say that this happy face function can accept an X position and a Y position. These are like a very specific type of local variable that I'm declaring in my function and that I can only use inside my function. So if I had another variable somewhere in my program called XPOS, YPOS, not the same. This is specific to my function. Now I need to be able to use these in my function. And this is going to be very similar to when we used variables to make things follow the mouse. I'm going to pick a point that's going to be the center of my function, and I'm going to make that the original X and Y position. I'm going to choose to use the ellipse because A, it's my biggest shape, B, it's the first shape that's drawn, and it just makes sense. And I'm going to make a note that the original point that this is drawn at is 125, 200. Now, instead of that 125, I'm going to put in X position, and instead of that 200, I'm going to put in Y position. Now, similar to what we were doing when we were looking at moving things with variables, I'm going to think about what is the distance between 125 and my next coordinate point. So the distance between 125 and 110, negative 15. So I'm going to write X position minus 15. The distance between 200 and 200 is 0. So I can just write Y position because plus or minus 0 changes nothing. Now I'm on to my next arc. The distance between 125 and 160 is 35. So I'm going to write X position plus 35. The distance between 200 and 200 again is 0. So I can just put Y position. And then I'm on to my last arc. The distance between 125 and 136 is 11. So X position plus 11. And the distance between 200 and 226 is 26. So I'm going to put Y position plus 26. Now, if I play and run, you're going to see that nothing happens on my screen. And I am in fact getting an error. And it now says happy face takes exactly 2 arguments, 0 given on line 25 in main.py. I have told the computer to expect getting information for these 2 parameters, but I've given no arguments to fill them in. So in place of all of these, I would like to give some arguments. I'm going to do 50-50. I'm going to do 250, 300. I'm going to do 100, 200. I'm filling these in pretty willy-nilly, pretty randomly. I'm going to hit run. And I now see that I have 3 different smiley faces around my screen. I can work on moving these if I want. I can change this to 150 and I'll see it shift over on the page. I could make these follow my mouse, perhaps. Oops. I just want one to follow my mouse. So I now have a shape attached to my mouse. I can do whatever I want with these now that I can move their position around. If you were feeling so inclined, you could go ahead and make another parameter that will accept an argument for a different value. Maybe you want to change the stroke weight. Maybe you want an option to take the stroke on or off. Maybe you want to change the fill color whenever you draw one. Those would all be parameters that you could add to this argument. We are going to talk more about how you can document your functions in our next video. What I would recommend before you move on is to take a minute and try and do the same thing we did for happy face for angry face. So you're going to create and define a function. You're going to move all of this code from our draw function into your newly defined function. And then you are going to try and call angry face and try and add those parameters so that it will accept arguments to also be moved around the screen. Once you have that done, meet me back here and we'll move on to our next video. Thanks. Bye.